Hello everyone, again from Poland. After moving on tracks, I decided to stay a bit more in Poland, and because around there was a race going on after a week, I decided to try it, and this time it will be BikeMaraton, which happened in Zlotoryja. I chosen to go for mega distance, which is 53 kilometers, 1,500 meters of elevation up, and I'm starting from the last gate. Last gate in this event means that around 500 participants are in front of me. So because I'm participating here for the first time, sector 7 was my starting gate. In the beginning there was a cobblestone uphill, and a few hundred meters away from the start I noticed that no one is following in my tempo. So that means that we are going to have interesting time overtaking slower participants quite soon. For those who are not aware how bike marathon start happens, there are 7 gates. Everyone is being released 3 minutes each, and those sectors probably are created based on the past results. So if you were fast in the past, you are going in the first gates and all that stuff. Both mega and classic distances started in the same sectors, so even though you start from sector 1, in that sector there will be 2 groups of people who are racing either classic 35 kilometers or so, or mega distance, which is 53 in Zlotoryja. And you could have seen that there were a lot of overtakes already, and we are only 10 minutes or so into the race. For those who know how my onboards looks like, it's not required to explain that I use segments from Strava as well, so that way you can see those visuals on the screen. And for those who are watching it for the first time, you will notice that there are segments information during the both full onboard and this race analysis. It's not that much inspiring when you see a long queue building up like 15 minutes into the race, but even though I tried to overtake few guys here and there, at some point I realized that you're not going to rush anywhere further in those single tracks, so I just took a few deep breaths and understood that it's my patience testifying time. But whenever I saw that there is a possibility, I always try to make an overtake, and thanks for those who just allow doing that. Not so much thanks for those who even try to block it or speed it up then making that overtake. So it's a bit stupid, because if you are fast, you wouldn't have to do it anyways, and I won't be able to catch you. But because that happened and you are being overtaken, making cover to risk in the single tracks, well, you will see that such occasions were not that rare. In this segment where we had a long queue in the single track, I kind of lost more than 1 minute just standing. Usually on the flats you can find some wheel to follow. In this race it was not the case, and I was overtaking everyone who started from earlier sectors simply because I'm just first time participant. So overtaking on the climbs, it's not that bad because there is no much speed, and you can find pretty much area to do so. The biggest obstacle is when you have to do it on the downhill. However, it still requires a bit of a power surge because there is less traction, less rolling, and you have to put that power to the pedals if you want to overtake successfully, because technically on the sides of the single tracks you don't know what you can find. There were some stones, there are also all sorts of wooden pieces, and in general we can just fall into the ditch. So it's a bit of tricky, but again, when it's low speed, it's not that complicated. Because I was doing this course for the first time, I had no idea what to expect, and unfortunately I didn't realize that in front there will be a very nice single track, very flowy. You just can go at the full speed and make those corners, etc. However, if you meet someone in those single tracks, it's really hard to make an overtake unless he decides to move to the side. And here was a situation when I kind of was going into the tree because our participant just tried to add additional power when being overtook. So at first, from excitement, I tried to make overtakes whenever possible, and yeah, sorry for those where those overtakes were not the smartest moves. If someone goes wide, I always try to make that for my benefit, and you could have seen how that guy hit me. So definitely he was trying to go around that log on the ground, but he turned and we kind of crossed each other. So from that moment I decided not to risk at all and went for a few minutes in that queue. And if you take a look at the heart rate, it was 130 or so. So racing at 130, you can have imagination how slow it was. In this race I was the only Lithuanian in mega distance, and it was also my fiance which raced in classic distance. So we were 2 Lithuanians here in total among more than 600 participants. If we talk about participants, there were 216 in mega distance, more than 300 in classic, and probably around 150 or so in fun distance. I would say that all the downhills in the first 2 hours were wasted, simply because if someone in front goes slow, you have no other option as to go slow as well. And it was a bit daunting because you make those climbs, you overtake a lot of guys on the climb, and unfortunately it leads you nowhere because you waste time on a downhill then. Talking about the downhills, you could have seen on the left the guy which had dirty side, so probably unfortunately fell down on that downhill, so hopefully nothing serious happened to him, but I noticed that only after looking at the footage. Basically the way how all 3 distances are set up is that at some point the course is crosses and you just have to take on the left or on the right or go straight for your distance. And in this specific area all 3 distances crossed, so it was probably both fun, classic and mega altogether. Because why I'm trying to guess that is because there were kids there, there were some participants who were on their feet even though it was not steep climb, so that's why I make that guess. Here was a perfect example how we can see the markup of different courses. So we went straight, that means we are going for the mega distance. And as soon as we hit it, it was very bumpy meadow, like probably if you go in the potatoes field, it's a lot more smoother, but it was just few hundred meters or so, and thankfully it was it, because I was like, okay, so if that's how mega looks like, I'm not sure I want to do it for. Anyways, of course I'm kidding, and all was fine. And yeah, then someone is slower on the downhill, so you could have seen that the guy just fell down on his side. And it's a bit tricky, but at the same time there is nothing else you can do. You just go how our participants are able to. I would say that the course was ideally marked up. There was no guesses where you should go here or there, and at the same time there were exclamation marks in pretty much needed areas. Sometimes maybe there were a bit too much of them, but in general if you go at fast speed and you can see some exclamation marks, you just try to lower down the speed and see what's in front. And in few cases there were huge ditches or some obstacles where without those markups it would have been complicated. So from that sense, organizers did everything very nicely, even though everything in the event was in Polish. It looked like very well organized event where we had start packages as well as pasta party at the end, so it was very nice from that sense. So I'm not sure how the classic distance looked like, but in the mega there was some nice single tracks involved, and in this specific example it was off-camber one where we can see some tire markups where participants went off that camber. Overall, I really liked the course because it kind of had very good balance between the single tracks and the flats, if we can call them flats. But at the same time, even though if you go on the gravel road, it's not too long to make you boring, and then you just turn into some fields or forests or single tracks, double tracks. So it was not boring and very interesting to ride. At the top bar you can see the progress of the whole race, as well as the time, how much I spent on the course and the distance remaining. So we are 1 hour 40 minutes into the course, and I'm still overtaking everyone like they are from different league. Fast things forward, for the whole race no one was able to overtake me, nor at least catch me back after I overtook them. Even though at some points it looked like, well, alright, so this guy might seem fast enough, I might overtake him and we'll see whether he's going to follow me, and a few moments afterwards you see that no one is at the back. So either I was very strong on the day, or I was just not able to catch the ones who started earlier. So imagine that the first gate started at 11 a.m. and myself started at 11:18, so it was 18 minutes gap between the first group of people, so everyone else started 3 minutes after. I kind of liked the idea of sectors, even though I started from the last one and suffered quite a lot while overtaking others. It was simply because it was the first time racing in this series. Imagine that if you are strong and you are in the beginning of the gates, you don't have the queue issues. So if you are strong, sooner or later those problems will disappear. So 2 hours into the race, I kind of catched few guys who looked like potentially might be my drafting targets. However, as soon as I catch them, I realize that no, it's not the case, because they are going too slow for me. And going faster than locals on the downhills was also a strange thing, but that's how it looked like on the race day. So on the downhills, I kind of felt confident as well, and maybe it was because I just went to this race 1 week afterwards the Mouflon tracks, even though the course is completely different and nothing to compare, but it's still a bit of elevation gain. Keep in mind that this race had 1,500 meters of elevation for mega distance, and at the same time it still required quite a lot of handling and steering, so I kind of felt good in this setup of the course. Whenever you see the segment tables on the screen, keep in mind that those are taken directly from Strava. So if you are not public account, you are set up yourself privately, you won't appear in them. If you were very lazy and you published your activity to Strava publicly like 2 days after a race, you will not also appear in the leaderboards. So uploading activities on the race day is suggested if you want to maybe appear in those segments on the onboard. Does it change something? Well, technically no, but in theory at some point in the future, if you take a look at those videos, you could have a look how fast you've been flying if you appeared in the top 10. So that's kind of the main reason why you might want to use it. Thankfully, I was able to go on the climb without going off the bike. That's one of my goals in the races. Whenever it's hard, you just try to push it through and don't go off the bike unless it's, well, very much necessary, or someone goes off the bike and you have no other option. Around 10 kilometers towards the end of the race, it started to become only single tracks, and those single tracks were like in the single mount. So you go up, you go down, and it was very much in the same area, and it was stony in some parts, and those stones, like huge rocks, where in some parts you are not able to go very easily through them. It was not long but very sharp and very steep. From time to time I take a look at the profile of elevation on the Garmin, and I knew that this one is going to be a tough. But what can you do? You just sit in the saddle more up front and you try to keep steady cadence. And of course, when you see that someone in front are just crawling off the bike, pushing their bikes further, it just motivates you to stay on the bike. And funny thing is that when someone goes off the bike and he pushes it, probably they believe that no one else is going to do it because they didn't, and they do that in the center of a single track, or in this case it's kind of wide track, but they do it in the center anyways. So you have to make an introduction of some sort that you are coming, and you are coming fast. It was a bit tricky in terms of the language, even though I kind of checked how the left and right sounds in Polish. Actually, I forgot how the right is, but left is somewhat like lewy, or a bit different, but still. And the right, I'm not exactly sure how it was, so I just kept going from the left, shouting lewy or something like that. So yeah, someone understood in English as well, someone didn't, someone maybe didn't even want to understand what you're saying. So talking about the reasons why I came to this race, after Mouflon tracks I checked there were some available events around the area, so I would just stay for a week and go to that event. And thankfully there was Zlotoryja around the block. So yeah, I was very surprised by the quality of the event, because BikeMaraton is probably the #1 marathon in Poland. I was very excited to check how it looks like, and I was surprised by the quality and organization level. So yeah, I definitely going to plan to visit this organizer's event in the future as well, maybe when logistics goes in the right way, because going straight from Lithuania for a single race is a bit of an overkill. But at the same time, if you have some spare time, you can just reach to this destination. There are very nice single track areas a bit more to the south, and you can make bike holidays. I would strongly suggest to consider this event if you are around the block, and just make sure that if you are finishing, you check how the finish is going to look like. And actually I kind of did, but at the same time I was not aware that it's so slippery here. Thankfully I managed to stop almost before that tape, and I finished full throttle in this grass uphill. So even though that stoppage, my time was not so bad for the finish, I would say. So yeah, that was a huge effort. So considering I started from the 7th sector, I managed to go still 48 in the open category of Mega, and I reached 16th position out of 44 in my age group. I'm in the M3. Actually, funny thing happened is that Neringa managed to take the 2nd place among her age group, but because there was no internet connection, we kind of didn't check the results and we left the place. We only noticed that after we've been having the lunch, so always check results before leaving, because who knows, maybe you took the podium. Also, don't forget to check the full onboard, because it was really interesting and I added just very few tiny pieces here in this video. So that's it, thanks for your time, and I hope to see you around. And also, if you like this type of content, feel free to subscribe to my channel and look our race analysis videos. So yeah, these are coming very often. Also, I can unleash the secret that this is not the last race which I'm doing this month in Poland, and I'm going to participate in upcoming weekend in another marathon. Can you guess what it's going to be like? Drop a comment if you know, or maybe you have a guess where I'm going to participate. So yeah, until soon.